The evening was cold and rainy. People rushed through the streets with umbrellas, trying not to get wet. Inside a warm and bright bakery, the smell of fresh cakes and chocolate filled the air. The shop was full of rich customers laughing, buying expensive desserts, and enjoying the soft music playing in the background. In the corner of the bakery, a man in a simple coat stood quietly, watching everything. No one knew that he was the owner of the bakery, and not just the bakery, but many more businesses. He was a billionaire, but today he dressed like a regular person. He often did this to see how his workers treated poor people. Just then, the door of the bakery opened. A small girl, around 10 years old, stepped in. Her clothes were old and torn. Her feet were bare, wet and red from the cold. She looked around, her eyes wide with wonder. The girl walked slowly towards the glass counter. She looked at a small chocolate cake decorated with white cream and tiny stars. Her eyes sparkled as she stared at it. Her lips moved slightly as if whispering something. She touched the glass gently with her fingers. One of the workers frowned. "Hey, you can't just stand here and make the glass dirty," he said sharply. The girl stepped back, scared, but she didn't leave. She reached into her small bag and pulled out a pair of worn-out shoes. They were old, with holes in them, and one strap was broken. She held the shoes in both hands and looked at the worker with hope. "Please," she said softly, "can I give you these shoes for that cake? It's my little brother's birthday today. He is sick. I want to give him something sweet just this once." The bakery went quiet. A few customers turned to look. Then someone laughed. Another whispered, "Is she serious?" The worker crossed his arms. "Shoes for a cake? Are you joking, little girl? This cake costs more than your whole outfit." The girl's hands began to shake, but she did not drop the shoes. "Please, sir, I don't have money, but I worked hard to clean these shoes. They are all I have." The worker looked disgusted. "Go away, beggar. This is not a place for people like you." Before she could speak again, a deep voice came from behind. "Wait." Everyone turned. It was the man in the coat, the billionaire. He stepped forward, looking at the girl closely. "What's your name, little one?" he asked gently. "Hope," she replied. "Hope," he repeated softly, almost like he had heard that name before. He looked at the shoes, then at her wet feet. Then his eyes moved to her hand, and suddenly he stopped. His eyes widened. On her left hand, near the thumb, was a small birthmark. It was shaped like a moon with a dot beside it. His heart started beating faster. He knew that mark. He had seen it only once in his life. Years ago. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The worker, still annoyed, said, "Sir, don't waste your time. She's just another street kid trying to get free stuff." But the man didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the birthmark. He slowly knelt down in front of the girl. "You said the cake is for your brother?" She nodded. "He has a high fever. We don't have a father, and our grandmother says he may not live long if he doesn't." "Eat?" The man's voice trembled. "And your mother?" "She died when I was a baby," the girl replied, looking down. The man's hands began to shake. He touched his chest, trying to calm himself. "How old are you?" he asked. 10, she said, the same age his daughter would be, if she were still alive, or lost. The billionaire slowly stood up. His face had turned pale. He looked around the bakery, but everything had gone quiet in his mind. Hope stood still, confused. The man looked at her one more time. His voice was barely a whisper. How do you have that birthmark?" The girl looked at him, surprised. "My grandma says I was born with it." "Why?" But he didn't answer. He just stared at her hand, eyes full of questions, fear, and something else. Tears started to form in his eyes, but he quickly wiped them away before anyone could see. The girl waited, still holding her shoes, still hoping for the cake. The man turned to the worker and said in a firm voice, "Give her the cake, and pack some extra cookies too." The worker was shocked but obeyed. As the girl smiled and took the cake, she looked back at the strange man who helped her. He was still looking at her, not with pity, but with something deeper. He whispered to himself, "It can't be. Is she really?" The rain had stopped. But the billionaire's thoughts were storming inside him. He sat alone in his dark office, staring at the CCTV screenshot, the one showing the little girl holding a birthday cake with a small smile on her face. And the birthmark on her hand, that mark, the same one his baby daughter had 10 years ago. The one he could never forget. He leaned back in his chair, eyes full of pain. Flashback. 10 years ago, it was a sunny day when everything changed. His wife had just given birth to a baby girl in the city hospital. She was beautiful, with tiny fingers and soft skin. The nurses said she had a special birthmark near her thumb, shaped like a moon with a dot beside it. They named her Hope. But just 3 days later, while his wife rested and he stepped out for a work call, disaster struck. There was a fire in the hospital's nursery section. Chaos broke out. Smoke filled the halls. Nurses screamed. Patients were rushed out. When he ran back inside, the nursery was in flames. They searched for hours. Many babies were saved, but Hope was not found. The doctors said her body might have been lost in the fire or stolen during the confusion. The only thing they found near her crib was her tiny bracelet. His wife never recovered from the pain. She fell sick, mentally and emotionally. A year later, she passed away. Since then, the billionaire lived with only one thing in his heart: loss. Back to present now, he wasn't sure what to believe. Could that barefoot girl really be his daughter? Was it just a coincidence? He picked up the bracelet, the one Hope wore as a newborn. He kept it with him always. Quietly, he whispered, "Are you alive?" He made a decision that night. He would find the truth. Meanwhile, in a tiny hut, the girl named Hope ran home through the wet streets, holding the cake carefully. Her smile was wide. Her feet were muddy and tired, but her heart was light. She opened the small wooden door of her house. Inside, her grandmother sat on a broken chair, coughing. "Grandma," Hope said happily, "look, I got a cake for Leo's birthday." The old woman's eyes widened. "A cake? From where?" Hope explained everything. How she tried to give her shoes, how the workers laughed, and how a kind man stopped them and gave her the cake. The grandmother's hands trembled as she took the cake box. "Did he say anything else?" "No," Hope said. "But he looked at my hand, the birthmark. He seemed surprised." The grandmother froze. She looked at the mark, the one she had seen every day for 10 years, the one that made her feel both guilt and fear. She turned away and walked slowly to the back of the hut. From under her bed, she pulled out an old yellow newspaper. On the front page was a headline: "Baby girl missing after hospital fire. Parents still searching." Next to it was a small baby photo, and below it, a description: birthmark on left hand, shaped like a moon with a dot. The grandmother's eyes filled with tears. She touched the picture gently. "I tried to protect you," she whispered, "but maybe it's time you knew." Next morning, Billionaire's mansion, the Eye. Billionaire called his head of security. "I want every camera in that area checked. I want her address. I want to know where she lives, who she lives with, and where she goes." "Yes, sir," the man replied. "And," the billionaire added, "do it quietly. I don't want to scare her." Back in the slum, Hope didn't know anything about her real past. To her, the old woman was her grandma. She had no memories of the hospital fire. She thought her mother died when she was a baby, and her father was never in her life. She lived a simple life, selling flowers in the morning, helping in a roadside tea stall in the evening, and sometimes collecting plastic bottles to earn coins. But inside her, she always felt like something was missing, like she didn't belong. Sometimes she would stare at rich people and wonder, what if I was one of them? She would dream of studying in a big school, wearing shoes, eating real cake without begging. That night, as she sat beside her sick little brother Leo, feeding him cake, she smiled. He coughed but managed a small laugh. "Best cake ever," he said weakly. She kissed his forehead. "Next year, I'll get you a big one." The morning sun rose gently over the slum, but inside the tiny hut, the air was heavy. Hope sat by the window, holding a small flower in her hand. She was thinking about the man from the bakery, the one who had looked at her so strangely. She couldn't forget the way he stared at her hand, like he had seen something he lost long ago. She turned to her grandmother, who was boiling water. "For tea." "Grandma," she asked slowly, "do you know why people look at birthmarks strangely?" The old woman paused, her hand tightening around the kettle. "Why do you ask?" Hope shrugged. "That man from the bakery. He saw mine and he looked scared, or shocked." The old woman forced a smile. "Some people are just strange, my dear. Don't think too much." But Hope noticed something odd. Her grandmother's voice was shaking. She had never seen her lie before. At least, not like this. Elsewhere, in a rich office, the billionaire sat in a silent meeting room. The CCTV footage played again on his laptop, Hope offering her shoes, then the close-up of her hand. The birthmark. He couldn't stop watching it. He picked up the photo of his late wife. "She has your eyes," he whispered. "Is it possible?" Suddenly his assistant entered. "Sir, we have more details." The billionaire looked up quickly. "She lives with an older woman in a slum near the railway station. Her name is Hope. She works odd jobs, no school record, no birth certificate, no hospital files." "What about the woman?" he asked. "She says she's her grandmother, but we found no records of any legal adoption, no papers at all." The billionaire stood up slowly. "I want the truth, whatever it takes." Back in the slum later that day, Hope walked through the market carrying a basket of flowers. People ignored her like usual. Some pushed past her, but she didn't mind. She was used to it. She walked by a school gate and stopped to watch children, in uniform, laughing and running. One girl dropped a pencil. Hope picked it up and tried to return it, but the girl's mother slapped Hope's hand away. "Don't touch my daughter, you dirty slum girl." Hope froze. Tears filled her eyes, but she said nothing. She simply walked away. Behind her, someone was watching. A man in a suit standing near a car, holding a small camera. That night, at the hut, the old woman sat alone after dinner, staring at the old newspaper again. Her hands shook. She heard Hope humming softly while washing dishes in the corner. She knew the truth couldn't stay hidden much longer. 10 years ago, when the hospital caught fire, she was working there as a cleaner. When the fire started, she ran into the nursery and saw a baby alone in a crib. She grabbed her and ran, thinking the building would collapse. Later, when she found out the baby was from a rich family, she got scared. She was poor, had no family, and had just lost her own daughter to illness. So she kept the baby, named her Hope, raised her like her own. But now, the real father was close. She could feel it. The next day, a surprise visit. Hope returned home to find a basket outside their door. Inside were fresh fruits, medicine, new clothes, and a note. For the girl who gave her shoes for cake. "May your heart never go hungry." Again, a friend, Hope smiled. "Grandma, look what someone gave us." The old woman read the note and nearly dropped it. She knew who had sent it. "He found us," she whispered. "It's him." Hope looked confused. "Who, Grandma?" But the old woman shook her head. "No one. Just eat, my child." Hope sat with Leo and shared the fruit happily, but her eyes kept going back to the note. That handwriting felt warm, familiar. Later that night, a hidden conversation, the billionaire met secretly with his investigator. "I want a DNA test," he said. "I don't want to scare her, but I need to know." "We can arrange a health camp in that area," the man replied. "We'll collect a sample without her knowing." The billionaire nodded. "Do it." The next morning, the health camp, a colorful van parked near the slum. A speaker announced, "Free checkup for children, blood, tests and medicine." Hope was curious. She asked her grandmother if she could go. The old woman hesitated, then agreed. "Just be careful." Hope entered the van. A kind nurse took her details and offered her a juice box. Then came a small blood test. "You're brave," the nurse smiled. "Just a small pinch." Hope didn't mind. She liked helping people. She thanked them and left. Back in the van, the nurse called the billionaire's assistant. "We have her sample, sending it to the lab now." The sun was just rising when the billionaire stood outside the small hut. His black car waited behind him, silent. Two security men stood at a distance, but he told them, "Stay back. I want to do this alone." He looked at the tiny wooden door in front of him, the place where his daughter had grown up, poor, barefoot, and unknown to him, a place with broken walls, but memories inside. He raised his hand and knocked gently. Inside, Hope was combing her little brother Leo's hair. The knock startled her. She opened the door and gasped. It was him, the man from the bakery, the one with kind but sad eyes. "Hello," he said softly. "Can I come in?" Hope turned to her grandmother, unsure. The old woman stepped forward. Her eyes met the billionaire's. There was fear and shame. "Yes," she said, her voice dry. "Please come in." Inside the hut, he looked around the small room. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked in the corners, and the floor was made of dry mud. But everything was clean, simple, humble. Leo coughed from the bed. Hope rushed to his side. The billionaire smiled gently at the boy. Then he looked at the old woman and asked, "Can we talk alone?" Hope stood to leave, but he said, "No, you stay too. This is about you." The grandmother sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking. He took a deep breath. "My name is Daniel Carter. I'm a businessman, a billionaire. 10 years ago, I lost my newborn daughter in a hospital fire. Her name was Hope. She had a birthmark, like yours." Hope's eyes widened. Daniel continued, "I searched for her for years. We thought she died. But then, I saw you." He looked at her hand. "That birthmark, your age, your face, you look like your mother." Hope looked at her grandmother, confused. Daniel placed a small baby bracelet on the table. "This was hers. It's yours." The room went silent. The old woman finally spoke. Her voice cracked. "I took her. I didn't mean to. I thought everyone was gone. I tried to find her parents after the fire, but I had no proof. I was poor. Alone. My daughter had just died. I couldn't leave the baby." Daniel didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just asked, "Why didn't you come later? When the news spread? When posters were everywhere?" "I was afraid," she whispered. "You're rich. I thought you'd take her away, and I loved her. I raised her like my own." Hope stood frozen, tears falling down her cheeks. She looked at Daniel. "Are you really my father?" He nodded. "Yes. And I have the DNA test to prove it." He handed her the report. She didn't understand the paper, but she could feel the truth in his voice. "I came here today," he said, "not to take you by force. I came to ask you something." The offer. He looked at Hope with soft eyes. "I want you to come with me. To live in my home. To study in a good school. To have everything you missed. Books, warm clothes, real food. Your own room." Hope blinked, stunned. "You won't have to work again. You won't walk barefoot again, and your brother, he'll get the best doctors. I promise." She looked at Leo, then at her grandmother. "But what about Grandma?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel hesitated. "She took you. That was wrong. But she also loved you. She raised you. I can't forget that." He looked at the old woman. "If you both want, she can come too." The grandmother gasped. She had expected anger, not kindness. "Why would you allow me in your life after what I did?" she asked. "Because you gave my daughter a life," Daniel said softly. "And she still loves you." Hope ran to her grandmother and hugged her tightly. "I love you, Grandma. I don't know what's true anymore, but I know you never hurt." "Me?" the old woman cried silently. Later that day, Daniel gave them time to think. He left his phone number and address. "I'll come tomorrow," he said. "Whatever you decide, I'll respect it." Hope watched his car disappear down the road. Her heart felt heavy, full of questions. Was she ready to leave the only life she had ever known? Could she trust a man who had just entered her world? She looked down at the bracelet in her hand, small, golden, with the letter H engraved on it. She whispered, "Hope. That was always my name." At the mansion, Daniel stood in his daughter's old nursery. The room had stayed untouched for 10 years. Pink walls, stuffed toys, a rocking chair. He whispered, "Please come back. Let me be your father again." The next morning came with golden sunlight and new hope. Hope stood outside her hut, holding her little brother Leo's hand. Their old bag, torn but clean, was packed with just a few clothes. Her grandmother stood beside her, wearing the only shawl she owned. Then they saw it. A sleek black car turned the corner and stopped gently in front of them. Daniel, the billionaire, stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just a simple shirt and soft smile. He looked at Hope. "Ready?" Hope took a deep breath. She turned to her grandmother. "Are we doing the right thing?" The old woman placed a hand on her cheek. "Sometimes the heart knows before the mind does." Hope looked at Leo, then nodded. They stepped into the car. The old hut slowly disappeared behind them. The mansion Hope had never seen anything like it. Tall gates, a long driveway with trees on both sides, a fountain in the middle, and a house so big it looked like a palace. Leo's eyes widened. "Is this real?" Daniel laughed softly. "Yes, and it's your home now." As they entered, servants greeted them politely. A woman guided them to clean rooms with warm beds and colorful curtains. There were shelves full of books and toys for Leo. A doctor came to check his health immediately. Hope stood quietly in the middle of it all, overwhelmed. Her hands were clean, but she still felt the dust of her old life on her fingers. She wasn't sure how to act. Should she speak like them? Should she smile? Should she say thank you? Daniel noticed her discomfort. He walked up to her gently. "You don't have to change for me," he said. "Just be you." She looked up and whispered, "I don't even know who I am." Daniel kneeled and held out something, her baby bracelet. "This," he said, "was the first thing I held when you were born. You were only 3 days old, but even then you held my finger with your tiny hand." Hope stared at the bracelet and took it slowly. A tear dropped from her eye. Dinner time. The dining room was big, too big. The table could fit 20 people. Hope sat beside Leo, who stared at the silver spoons and cloth napkins. The chef brought warm soup, bread, and chicken. Leo tasted a bite and giggled. "I feel rich already," Hope smiled. Daniel watched them, heart full. But the old woman, Hope's grandmother, sat quietly. She didn't eat much. Her eyes moved around the room, but her mind was somewhere else. After dinner, Daniel walked her to the guest room. She stopped and said, "You're a kind man. I didn't expect that. But I don't belong here," Daniel replied. "You raised my daughter when I couldn't. This house is as much yours as mine." She smiled sadly. "This house may have gold, sir, but I only understand mud and wooden floors." Daniel nodded with respect. "Then stay as long as you want, and when you're ready, I'll help you find a small home nearby, safe and peaceful." Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you." A night of new feelings. That night, Hope lay in her soft bed, staring at the ceiling. She missed the sound of the fan that clicked in her old hut. She missed the street dogs barking outside. She missed the smell of tea and the touch of her thin blanket. But she also felt safe. She touched the bracelet on her wrist and whispered, "Is this really my life now?" In the next room, Daniel stood in front of a baby photo of Hope, kept in a silver frame. "She's here," he said softly. "But how do I become a father again after all these years?" The next day, a new routine. Hope was given a uniform for school. Private tutor came to help her catch up with reading and writing. At first, she was shy. When asked to read a sentence, her voice trembled. I don't know all the words." The teacher smiled gently. "That's okay. You're learning. That's what matters." Every day, she learned something new. How to write her full name, how to speak English confidently, how to use a computer. But some things were still hard, like sitting alone at lunch. The rich girls at school looked at her strangely. They whispered and laughed. "She's the one from the slum," one said. Hope heard it, but she said nothing. Just like always. Hope's secret visit one evening, Hope returned to the slum. She brought food for her old neighbor, the blind man who played the flute. She gave toys to the kids who used to play with rocks. She sat beside a beggar child and tied her shoelace. "I haven't forgotten," she whispered. "This place made me who I am." When she returned home, Daniel was waiting. He didn't scold her. He just asked, "Did it help?" Hope nodded. "It reminded me that I have two lives, one I came from, and one I'm learning to live in now." Daniel Papa, softly at first, then with love. Leo's health was improving too. The doctors said he would be okay with regular care. He smiled more now, laughed like a child again. The grandmother had moved to a small house nearby, gifted by Daniel. She visited every week and helped cook food the old way, with love, not recipes. For the first time in her life, Hope felt like everything was okay, until she arrived. The arrival, it was a Sunday morning. Hope was helping the gardener water flowers when a shiny red car stopped at the gate. From it stepped a tall, sharp-looking woman wearing high heels, dark, sunglasses, and a proud expression. She walked straight inside without knocking. Daniel was in the living room when he saw her. His smile faded. "Clara?" he said, shocked. The woman removed her sunglasses. "I heard your lost daughter is back," she said. "I had to see it with my own eyes." Hope entered the room, wiping her hands on her dress. She paused when she saw the woman. Clara stared at her, up and down like she was inspecting a painting she didn't like. "So, this is her?" Clara said coldly. "This slum girl is your heir?" Hope felt the words hit her chest like stones. Daniel stood up. "That's enough, Clara." Hope looked at him. "Who is she?" Daniel hesitated, then replied, "She's my ex-fiancée," Clara added quickly, "and your soon-to-be problem." The hidden past. Daniel had once been engaged to Clara, 2 years after losing his daughter. It was a short, broken relationship filled with cold talks and business dinners. When Daniel adopted charity work and kept looking for Hope, Clara grew tired. "I didn't want a daughter. I wanted a husband who looked at me, not at hospital reports and street children," she had once said before leaving. Now, seeing Hope alive and living in the mansion, Clara's heart burned with jealousy. "She doesn't belong here," Clara said sharply. "She's not trained, not educated. She doesn't know this world." Hope looked at Daniel, hoping he'd defend her. And he did. "She is my daughter. That's all that matters." But Clara wasn't done. "You think your board of directors will accept her as the future owner of your empire? A girl who lived in garbage and mud?" she asked. Daniel's face darkened. "If they don't, they can leave." Hope's doubt that night. Hope sat alone in the garden. The stars above sparkled gently, but her heart felt heavy. She looked at her hands, clean now, with a golden bracelet around her wrist, but the voice of Clara echoed in her head. "Slum. Girl doesn't belong here." She began to cry silently. Daniel came outside and sat beside her. "You heard everything?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Is she right?" Hope whispered. "Am I embarrassing to you?" Daniel turned to her quickly. "Never. Don't you ever think that. But I don't talk like rich girls. I don't know what to wear at events. I don't understand business talk or fancy forks." Daniel smiled softly. "None of that made you my daughter. Your heart did, your courage, your love for Leo, the way you gave up shoes for cake." He took her hand. "The world will try to tell you who you are, but only you get to decide that." Hope leaned against him. "But what if people don't accept me? Then they don't deserve you," he replied. The next move, Clara wasn't finished. She met with a few of Daniel's business rivals. She showed them old photos of Hope in torn clothes, picking trash, carrying water buckets. "She's not fit to be part of a billion-dollar legacy," she hissed. "We must stop this mistake." Rumors spread. Some news outlets started whispering. Headlines: "Billionaire's daughter found in slum. Is it real or publicity? Poor girl to rich heiress. Fairy tale or fake?" Hope saw the headlines. She saw the comments online, cruel, harsh words from strangers. She stopped going to school. She stopped smiling. One night, she packed her bag quietly. But before she could walk out, she heard Leo's voice. "Where are you going?" he asked, holding his small blanket. Hope turned around, trying to smile. "Back to where I came from." Leo shook his head. "No, you came from here, from love, not the streets." She sat down and hugged him tightly. "I don't want people to hate me," she whispered. Leo looked at her with wisdom far beyond his years. "Then make them love you by being kind, like always. Not just in clothes, not just in the way she walked or spoke, but inside." Her heart had always been kind, but now it was becoming brave. She started going back to school again. People stared, but she stared back, calmly, with quiet confidence. At home, she began helping Daniel in his office. She sat in meetings, listened, more than she spoke, and asked questions. Daniel was proud. "She's learning faster than anyone," he told his manager. "She doesn't just understand numbers, she understands people." Hope smiled, but deep inside, she was still afraid of one thing: failing her father. A special event, Daniel was invited to a charity gala in front of hundreds of business leaders. This time he didn't go alone. He brought Hope. She wore a simple but elegant white dress. Her hair was tied back neatly. Leo waved goodbye proudly as she left with her father. As they entered the grand hall, cameras flashed. People whispered, "Is that the girl from the bakery story? She used to live in a slum, right? Does she even know how to behave at events like these?" Hope heard it all, but she remembered what Leo told her. "Make them love you by being kind." So she smiled, greeted people gently, even thanked the waitress who brought her water. Suddenly, the host stepped on stage. "We have a surprise speaker tonight, a girl whose story touched many hearts. Please welcome Hope Carter." Hope's eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. Daniel gave her a reassuring nod. "You can do this." Hope's speech. Hope walked slowly to the stage. Her hands shook a little, but her voice didn't. She spoke into the mic. "I used to walk barefoot. I used to wish for bread. I gave away my shoes once just to buy a cake for my sick brother." The hall went silent. "I didn't know I was a billionaire's daughter. I didn't know anything about money, fashion, or fame." She paused. "But I knew kindness, I knew hunger. I knew how it felt to sleep on an empty stomach, to study under a streetlight." She looked around the room. "Some of you might think, I don't belong here. Maybe you're right. But I'm not here to fit into your world. I'm here to build a new one, where people are valued by their heart, not by their background." Applause, slow at first, then louder. Daniel stood, clapping proudly. Even some of the coldest business people had tears in their eyes, but not everyone was happy. Clara, watching from the side of the room, clenched her fists. A dangerous proposal. The next day, a man named Mr. Victor visited Hope. He was a wealthy investor, old, clever, and greedy. He smiled at her. "You've won people's hearts. You're popular now." Hope looked at him cautiously. "What do you want?" He placed a folder on the table. "I want you to join my company. Be the face of my next project. We'll show the world a real success story, a poor girl who made it big. In return, you'll earn more than even your father gives you." Hope opened the folder. Millions of dollars. A contract that promised fame. "But," he added, "you'll need to speak against Daniel in one interview. Just say he wasn't kind to you at first, that you succeeded despite him." Hope froze. "He's using your story for his image. Don't be a puppet, be a star," he said. She stood up. Her voice was quiet but firm. "My father gave me love, not deals. He didn't make me rich. He made me feel safe." She pushed the folder back. "No amount of money will make me lie." Mr. Victor laughed coldly. "Then you just made a powerful enemy." Daniel finds out later that night. Daniel was reading when Hope came to him. "I need to tell you something," she said. She told him everything, about Mr. Victor, the money, the request. Daniel sat silently. Then he smiled. You passed the real test. Hope looked confused. What do you mean? He pointed to her heart. Some people fail when they become poor. Others fail when they become rich. But you stayed. Drew, that's what matters. Hope hugged him tightly. I just want to make you proud. You already have. Clara's last move. The next morning, police arrived at the mansion. They brought papers. A case had been filed against Daniel for business fraud, fake charges. Daniel was calm. I know where this came from, he said. Hope stood beside him. What do we do now? He looked at her. We fight together. But the board members were shaken. Some began to pull away. Hope knew it was Clara's doing. She couldn't destroy them from the outside, so now she was using the law. Daniel might lose everything if the case wasn't cleared. Hope took Leo's hand and said, "Whatever happens, we stay together." Leo nodded. Rich or poor, we are family. Daniel's company was in trouble. People were scared. Investors began pulling out. Newspapers filled with rumors. Billionaire under fire. Was his daughter a lie too? Hope watched it all, heart heavy. Daniel was silent but strong. He stayed in his study for hours, reading files, meeting lawyers. He never complained. But Hope could feel it. He was hurting. She couldn't sit still anymore. I'm not going to watch them break the man who saved my life, she said. Hope's mission. Hope took Leo to her grandmother's house and returned home with a plan. She began digging through old files, newspaper clippings, adoption records, anything that could help prove Daniel's honesty. And then, deep in an old folder, she found something. A letter from Clara. It was years old, written during the time of their broken engagement. In it, Clara had admitted anger at Daniel for refusing to shut down his charity work. You care more about slum kids than luxury deals. I won't stand beside a man who chooses orphans over billionaires. If you continue, I'll bring you down. Hope gasped. This was proof, a clear threat, written by Clara herself. She showed to Daniel. He looked at it, stunned. She put on a smile at our parties and was planning my destruction in secret. Hope stood straight. We're not afraid of her anymore. Daniel touched her shoulder. Let's end this. The courtroom. The trial began. Cameras flashed. Reporters stood outside the courtroom, shouting questions. Inside, Daniel sat beside his lawyer. Hope was allowed to sit behind them. On the other side, Clara, dressed in white, pretending to be calm. She smiled as she spoke to the judge. Daniel misused company funds. He hid the truth. He brought a poor girl into this company to gain sympathy and control. The judge turned to Daniel. Do you have anything to say? Daniel stood up. I brought Hope into my life not for business, but because she is my daughter. I lost her as a child. I found her years later in a bakery, trading her shoes for a cake. He paused. I didn't save her. She saved me. People in the courtroom whispered. Then, Hope stood. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge allowed it. Hope walked to the mosque front slowly. She held up the letter Clara wrote. This was written by Miss Clara years ago. She threatened my father because he chose to help the poor. This case is not about fraud, it's about revenge. The judge read the letter. Clara's face turned pale. The courtroom fell silent. Then the judge said, case dismissed. Charges dropped. Daniel closed his eyes. Relief filled the room. Clara was escorted out for questioning. The world reacts. The news spread quickly. Truth wins. Daniel and Hope clear their name. From barefoot girl to brave heiress. Clara, exposed for false case. Hope was everywhere. Not because she was rich, but because she stood for truth.